Key and Peele were one of the greatest comedy duos of their generation. 18 out of 20 of Comedy Central's most viewed YouTube videos. Over 1 billion views. And then, in 2015, they just stopped. Everyone assumed they simply moved on to bigger things. And that was true for one of them. But what actually happened between these two is a lot more interesting than anyone realized. And a comedian who worked closely with Keegan recently said something that completely changed how people see this whole story. Let's get into it. So, before Key and Peele were Key and Peele were just two guys grinding through the improv comedy scene in Chicago. Both biracial, both raised by a black father and a white mother. Both understood what it felt like to never quite fit in anywhere. Too black for some rooms, too white for others. That shared experience became the foundation of everything they built together. They crossed paths on Mad TV.
What do I always say? Stay on the inside.
Jinx! No backsies, no penny taxis.
What?
You ain't supposed to talk. Jinx, double jinx, triple jinx, Googleplex. Damn!
Hey, guys!
Hands up, seas! Jinx, jinx, go away! Come again another day!
Immediately had incredible chemistry. And when Mad TV got canceled in 2009, and both of them found themselves without work at the same time, their manager suggested they try something together.
So my sitcom got canceled and his pilot for Fox didn't go. And our manager said, would you guys be interested in doing something together? Because I've got a situation that I think I can leverage.
The result was Key and Peele on Comedy Central, and it was an instant hit. Over 2 million viewers tuned in for the very first episode. Substitute Teacher, East-West College Bowl, Obama's Anger Translator.
I just want to say to my critics, I hear your voices, and I'm aware of your concerns.
So maybe if you can chill the hell out for like a second, then maybe I can focus on some you know.
Sketch after sketch becoming a permanent part of internet culture. 3 years. That is all it took to build a legacy that most shows never achieve in 10. In 2015, they ended the show. At the time, everyone assumed it was a mutual decision. Two friends ready for the next chapter. And they released a movie together in 2016 called Keanu, which was fine. Not great, but fine. Then Jordan Peele announced his directorial debut, a psychological horror film called Get Out. And everything changed. Get Out made $250 million on a $5 million budget. Won the Oscar for Best Original Screenplay, and overnight transformed Jordan Peele from that funny guy on Comedy Central into one of the most respected filmmakers in Hollywood. Then came Us in 2019, another $250 million, another critical triumph, and then Nope in 2022, another hit. In the space of a few years, Jordan Peele had completely transcended everything he and Keegan had built together. Meanwhile, Keegan was doing commercials, guest spots on sitcoms, voice acting roles, insurance ads. The guy who was always considered the more popular of the two, the heavy hitter, the one everyone expected to be more successful, was doing insurance commercials, and nobody could quite explain why. Until April 2026, a comedian called Aquila Hughes got on stage and told a story. She used code names, Lock and Banana.
He is, and I don't think this is too shady, I think it's true, the less successful half of a comedy duo that was prolific in the 2010s. Perhaps, you know, I think their code names could be Lock and Banana.
But there was absolutely zero confusion about who she was talking about. She had been developing her own sketch comedy show and brought Keegan on as an executive producer to help attract networks, which is completely standard in the industry. But with Keegan came his wife, Elle Key, who somehow also ended up with an executive producer credit.
My agent at the time calls me and she goes, how is pitching going? How do people feel about Locke? And I'm like, oh my God, they love him. Everybody loves Locke. And she's like, that's great, that's great. How do they feel about his wife, who is now somehow the executive producer on my show? And I'm like, you know, I hadn't really thought about it. I don't think people like her very much.
A role nobody asked her to fill. According to Aquila, Elle started inserting herself into the writer's room, offering notes that nobody found useful or funny. When her notes were ignored, she threatened to sue the network, and the show was eventually canceled altogether. Now, Keegan and his team came out and called the whole story outlandish and fabricated nonsense. But then people started paying attention, because there is actually a pattern here. Key was an aspiring actress who could not land anything beyond background roles. She met Keegan in 2016, married him in 2018, and from that point Keegan's career trajectory started heading in a very different direction. The History of Sketch Comedy, a book and podcast they co-created. Elle is listed as creator, writer, and director. Keegan is listed as performer and co-writer. She accepted a Webby Award for it with a tearful 5-word speech. Keegan did not get to say anything. They did a late-night interview where she sat in the main chair next to the host and Keegan sat off to the side, like he was the guest who did not belong. Now look, I want to be fair here. Some people see Keegan's behavior around his wife as just a man who is deeply in love and supportive. He lets her pick his clothes. He defers to her opinions. He publicly credits her with opening doors for him. Maybe that is just a very devoted husband. But here is the thing that nobody is really saying. Even if everything Aquila said is completely true, even if Key is every single thing people are accusing her of being, Keegan-Michael Key is a grown man. Nobody forced him to sideline himself in his own career. Nobody forced him to let someone with no comedy experience take the lead credit on a project about sketch comedy. Nobody forced him to sit off to the side of his own interviews. Jordan Peele has said absolutely nothing publicly about any of this. And that silence is doing a lot of heavy lifting. Because until Jordan comes out and says everything is fine, and these rumors are nonsense, people are going to keep running with the narrative that something is very wrong between these two. Key and Peele gave us 3 of the best years of comedy television this generation has seen. And whatever happened after, whether it was natural distance, career divergence, or something more complicatitos, not change that. But the story of what happened to Keegan-Michael Key after is genuinely one of the more fascinating and sad stories in Hollywood right now. A man with undeniable talent, who somehow ended up on the sidelines of his own life. Whether that is by choice, by circumstance, or by something else entirely, Keegan and Jordan really know the answer. And right now, neither of them is talking.